Imagine it's moving day. There's a high potential for something to go wrong. You don't want that something to be injury to your back. There are exercises that you can do to increase your back safety when lifting those heavy boxes, and that's where the deadlift comes in. The goal is simple: to begin with a static bar on the floor and lift it to an erect position. As you might imagine, there are techniques that can increase the efficiency and biomechanical effectiveness of the body during the lift, while simultaneously improving the safety of the movement. The deadlift is used to build strength in the legs, core, lower and upper back, traps, arms, and hands. Many see the deadlift as one of the great total body exercises. Unlike isolation exercises that target these muscle groups individually, the deadlift requires biomechanical coordination and mental toughness to push the floor away and pull a loaded bar into position. It is not easy by any means. The movement pattern of the deadlift can help football linemen, rugby players, basketball athletes, or any sport that requires using power against the ground to push against someone or something to jump into the air. When an injury or some other limitation prevents the use of the squat, the deadlift can fill in as a way to continue to train for maximal strength. The deadlift is not nearly as effective as training the legs as the squat due to the higher position of the hips, but this is also why the deadlift can be used in lieu of the squat for those with injuries. The setup begins with the bar on the floor. The lifter walks up to the bar perpendicularly and places his feet underneath the bar so that the bar is over the middle of the foot and the feet are about shoulder width apart with a slight toe out angle. The lifter reaches down, allowing his hands to slide down his thighs by sitting his hips back and keeping his back flat. When he can go no lower with his hips without changing the position of his back, he bends his knees until his hands reach the bar. He grasps the bar just outside his knees and ensures his shoulders are slightly in front of the bar. He squeezes his lats to keep the bar or shin on his shins and set his back. He ensures his neck is in a neutral position by looking about 12 feet in front of him on the floor. His entire body should be very tight and cocked for the lift. He then engages his legs, glutes, back, traps, etc. as he simultaneously pushes against the floor and pulls the bar up his shins to an erect position. There should be no jerking of any sort. As you can tell, the setup is much more important and detailed than the execution. This is because the deadlift is a strength and power movement. You just do it. However, there is a better mechanical position that you can get in to ensure the back is safe and no energy or effort is wasted. The deadlift is performed in the sagittal plane, and that splits the body into left and right halves down the center. The primary movements in this plane are those that move forward and backward and consist of flexion and extension of the joints involved. The primary joints are the shoulders, vertebrae, hips, knees, ankles, though the neck, elbows, wrists, fingers, and more are mostly held in their initially set position. The shoulder joints allow the arms to move from the anteriorly abducted position to a neutral position, and the vertebrae allow the spine to bear the compressive load while being held statically by isometrically contracted muscles. The hips are where most of the action occurs, going from near maximum flexion to a neutral anatomical position. The knees flex enough to allow the hands to reach the bar while keeping the back held flat. The ankles flex enough to allow the knees to flex and reach the bar while keeping the feet flat on the ground. Hopefully, the movement results in an erect position with most joints near neutral. The major muscles involved in doing the heavy lifting for the deadlift are the hamstrings and glutes maximus. These agonists pull the upper torso up and out of flexion into a neutral position. The antagonists for the deadlift are the psoas and hip flexor muscles. The quadriceps are also hip flexors, but are not the antagonists for the deadlift since they actually help get the bar up. The muscles that contribute to the movement, but are not doing the heaviest lifts, are the quadriceps, the muscles of the calf, the erector spinae, the abdominal muscles, the muscles of the upper back, and the traps. The quadriceps help to extend the flexed knees, and the calves help to extend the flexed ankles. The erector spinae and abdominal muscles stabilize the spine, and the upper back musculature help to stabilize the shoulders and keep the bar against the legs. The lever system for the deadlift is easiest to understand if you know the bar needs to travel as vertical a path as possible, and that the hamstrings and glutes need to do the majority of the work. Vertical bar path means the bar should start directly below where it is to finish, which is right above the midfoot. This prevents any unnecessary movements that would need to be overcome. The idea that the hamstrings and glutes are the agonists means that the lifter does not want to set the hips too low. Doing so will close the knee angle. This will require more quadriceps involvement, but it would also shorten the hamstrings and reduce their involvement. Also, lowering the hips too much causes the shoulders to move back. All of this will combine to result in the hips shooting upward immediately when the pull begins, to a position in which they should have been in the first place. The most common error of the deadlift is rounding of the back. Mark Rippetoe says, everything else can go wrong with the deadlift and nothing really bad will happen, but if your low back is to round under a big load, safety will be compromised. Attempting to lift a bar that is overloaded will turn the deadlift from a leg lift movement into a back lift movement, significantly increasing the potential for injury. Leg lifts keep the lower back in an erect position and impose the lowest amount of shear and compressive forces on the spine. However, having too much weight will force the low back from an erect position into flexion, thereby making it a back lift movement. This requires the erector spinae to transition from the stabilizing muscle into a primary mover, a role for which it is ill-suited. Back lifts impart the highest shear and compressive stress on the lumbar vertebrae and often lead to disc injuries or muscle strains. Additionally, the abdominal core will lose some of its tightness through the leg lift to back lift transition, adding to the potential for injury. It is very important to keep the back flat and keep intra-abdominal pressure to help stabilize the spine. The deadlift is a very effective exercise for building maximal strength and training with a whole body concept. Along with the squat, the deadlift is one of the toughest movements to complete with proper technique at maximal weight. Practice and repetition, along with a good coach or video, are critical for when progressing with additional loads.